What you've just heard is one of the many deaths from the monkey, the new major motion picture from Osgood Perkins, Stephen King, and James Wan. Experience it in theaters everywhere this Friday, because everybody dies, and that's life. Let's have some fun.
Hey guys, Madame Ram, starring Toni Collette, tells the dramatized true story of Georgia Frontiere, a former entertainer turned owner and heavy hitter in the boys' club that is the NFL. After her husband's mysterious death, she shocks everyone by inheriting the LA Rams and taking the reins of a major sports franchise. Relying on her wit and astrological charts to make decisions, she turns the NFL on its head and to this day remains one of the most beloved, despised, and controversial figures in modern sports. You guys, I started listening to this and I am absolutely hooked. The twists and turns, I didn't see any of them coming, and I have so many questions. I cannot wait to continue to tune in. The woman who went from singer to NFL owner, defying expectations and shaking up the world of professional football. Madame Ram dives into her relentless quest for respect, power, and a championship trophy. This isn't your typical sports story. Follow Georgia Frontiere as she navigates a male-dominated industry using star charts and sheer determination to make her mark in history. Whether you love football, powerful struggles, or just a good scandal, Madame Ram has it all. Ambition, mystery, and the unforgettable legacy of a woman who refused to stay on the sidelines. Madame Ram, the woman who took on a man's world and won. Follow Madame Ram on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening now. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Big Mad True Crime, where we get big mad over true crime. I'm your host, Heather Ashley, and today's case is out of Strongsville, Ohio, which is a suburb just outside of Cleveland. Small talk sucks, so let's dive in. On Sunday, July 31st, 2022, at approximately 6:15 in the morning, the Strongsville, Ohio Police Department got a call about a car that had crashed into the Plidco headquarters, which is this massive brick building at the end of Progress Drive in a business park. It's not often that a vehicle runs into a building, let alone at 6:15 a.m. on a Sunday, so officers rushed to the scene and found a Toyota Camry that had been absolutely destroyed. I don't know if words can accurately convey the damage that had been done to this vehicle, but the entire front end, driver's side, and passenger seat was completely crushed to the back. The idea that someone was actually in that vehicle when it hit the building was devastating, but it was worse than police could have ever imagined. There wasn't just one person in that car, there were three. In the driver's seat was 17-year-old Mackenzie Sharilla. Her 20-year-old boyfriend Dominic Russo was in the passenger seat, and Dominic's 19-year-old friend Davion Flanagan was in the back seat. All three occupants were unconscious, not breathing, and trapped inside that car. Firefighters had to use heavy machinery to extract them from the vehicle, and Mackenzie was airlifted to the Metro Health Medical Center in critical condition. But she was the only one. Both Dominic and Davion were declared dead at the scene. Dominic Russo was known for his ability to make any moment brighter. He loved to write songs, produce music, and he could even sing. He was young, but he wasn't going to let his age slow him down, and just prior to his death, he'd even started his own clothing line called Lost Motives. 2 months prior to the incident, he released a shirt that said, "A dream is just a dream if you never decide to chase it," which is very on brand for Dominic's mindset. Even though they were young, Dominic and Mackenzie had been in a relationship for 3 or 4 years, and court records actually indicate that she had lived with him throughout most of that time. Davion Flanagan was known for his smile. He had that kind of smile that makes you happy just seeing it. He was inherently kind and relentlessly dedicated to his friends and family, and also an incredible athlete. He'd been the starting running back for the Strongsville High School football team during his senior year in 2022 and had somehow still managed to make time to be a volunteer youth swim coach. Davion had this energy to him that could take him anywhere he wanted to go, and for him, his dream was simple. He wanted to own his own barbershop one day, so he'd been working full-time to save up for barber school. At the time of the crash, he was in the process of applying to the All-State Hairstyling and Barber College in Cleveland with the goal of starting the fall of 2023 barber program. To say that Davion and Dominic's family and friends were completely devastated by their deaths would be a massive understatement. And initially, their deaths were ruled an accident. While the Russo and Flanagan families were trying to figure out what to do with the amount of pain grieving had left them with, Mackenzie was recovering in the hospital from her injuries. I tried to find what they were, but I just couldn't find them online. When she found out that Dominic and Davion had died in the crash, she told the medical staff that she couldn't remember what happened. And it's not uncommon to forget moments of trauma. Our brain does that to try and protect us, but it seemed like maybe she hadn't forgotten everything. She started crying and shared feelings of grief, guilt, and shame. She said she wanted to die and that it was her fault for killing her boyfriend. Hearing that in this context might raise an eyebrow or two, but in the moment, it seemed like maybe she was just blaming herself since she was the one driving. In the days and weeks following the crash, Mackenzie seemed completely distraught over her boyfriend Dominic's death. Cleveland.com reported that she asked one of Dominic's family members if they could put pictures of her and Dominic in his casket when they buried him. When Dominic's obituary was released, Mackenzie flooded the comments with pictures of her and Dominic, along with quotes like, "I miss you, Nug. I still feel like you're just gonna walk in the door any second. I miss your laugh, your perfect smile. I feel your energy around me every day. I just wish it was physical. God, you are the last person to deserve this. You had such a perfect life ahead of you. I wish I told you all this more. Please wait for me." Another comment read, "I love you, Dominic. You were my soulmate. The connection we had was unbreakable. I wish I could be with you every single day. This doesn't feel real. You are an amazing, bright soul, the most amazing, smart thoughts anyone could think of. You are perfect. I love you so much." Mackenzie's Facebook cover photo was 2 pictures of her and Dominic together, and one woman commented, "Always remember the good times," to which Mackenzie replied, "I'm hurting so bad. He should be here. I miss him so much." While Mackenzie recovered and mourned very publicly, law enforcement was investigating that accident, and right off the bat, something was very off about all of it. Police later told Fox 8 that it didn't look like the Camry had stopped at the end of Progress Drive. Instead, it had gone full speed ahead, jumped the curb, went onto the lawn, hit a sign, and crashed straight into that building. The Plidco building is at the very end of Progress Drive, but Progress Drive turns into a T intersection in front of that building. You'd stop at the end of Progress and either take a left or a right on Alameda Drive, but that didn't happen. The car sped through the intersection, went over the curb, through a sign, and into the building. What happened where Mackenzie didn't so much as slow down or slam on the brakes when she knew the road was ending?
Good night, itchy eyes. Good night, sudden sneeze. Good night to your symptoms of allergies. Zysol is the allergy medicine you take before bed. It provides powerful relief while you rest your head. Not just all night, but all the next day. Zysol keeps working, keeping allergies at bay. And without those annoying symptoms disturbing your rest, you can wake up the next morning feeling your absolute best. Remember, be wise all. Take Zysol. At night.
According to Cleveland.com, while Mackenzie was in the hospital, her blood was tested for both alcohol and drugs. Results showed that she had traces of THC in her system, which exceeded the legal limit in Ohio and, at the time of the crash, had psilocybin mushrooms and a digital scale on her person. Psilocybin mushrooms are magic mushrooms, aka the kind that make you think clowns are invading your spaceship while you taste colors. Police obviously wanted some answers, so they asked Mackenzie if she could remember anything that happened, and she maintained that she couldn't. Dominic's mom later testified that she would regularly ask Mackenzie if she could remember anything about the crash, but Mackenzie always said that she couldn't. The most Dominic's mom ever got was a text that read, "I remember turning onto the street and then my vision fades to black. It really kills me not being able to remember anything. I promise you I would tell you. I've been asking my therapist why I don't remember, and she said it's because of trauma, but I'm gonna try to get hypnotized and make myself remember." Sure you are. Since Mackenzie's memory was a vault at this point, police took to surveillance cameras to try and get a better idea of how exactly this crash happened. What they found was so much worse than they could have imagined. Footage from various surrounding businesses showed that the crash happened at around 5:34 a.m., which is 41 minutes before a passerby even noticed the crash and called it in. The footage showed Mackenzie driving the speed limit down Pearl Road, which is the one you would take to get to Progress Drive, and she even used her blinker to slow down and turn onto the road. But once on Progress Drive, which is only about 3/4 of a mile long, Mackenzie gunned it, getting up to 92 miles an hour and did not stop until she hit that building. WKYC reported that the data recorder or black box from Mackenzie's Camry told an even more sinister story, that in the moments before the crash, the accelerator pedal was pushed down at 100% capacity with no application to the brake whatsoever. She didn't lift her foot to slow down, she didn't even attempt to pump the brakes, and there was nothing Dominic or Davion could have done. 4 to 5 seconds prior to the crash, the side airbags deployed, and roughly 1 second before the crash, the steering wheel made a hard right turn of 142.5 degrees before it slammed into that building. If Mackenzie wasn't going to tell the whole story, her car sure as shit was. Detectives learned that Mackenzie, Dominic, and Davion had all gone to a party at a friend's house the night before that accident. It was an all-nighter, and they stayed until about 5 a.m. on the 31st, when they all hopped in the car with Mackenzie and she started driving them home, or at least that was their plan. According to WKYC, though, police learned that Mackenzie had taken a different route home than she had taken to the party. This route took them to Progress Drive, which was completely off route to anywhere they could have been going. It was so off course that police couldn't find any reason whatsoever for Mackenzie to have gone to Progress Drive, a business park, at 5:30 a.m. on a Sunday. But of course, they were going to check. When police looked into Mackenzie's cell phone records, they found that she had been in the Progress Drive area just 3 days prior to the incident. That right there indicated that, at the very least, Mackenzie knew that this was a very short road and she needed to stop at the end of it. Police also dove into Mackenzie's social media and found a shit ton of instances where she drove openly, recklessly. They found so many of them that they had to create a folder labeled Reckless Driving. In total, they gathered 136 items, including photos of Mackenzie driving with joints in her mouth. To boot, they found a TikTok video where she fluttered her big-ass Bratz doll eyelashes while the words, "I'm just one of those girls that can do a lot of drugs and not die," flashed across the screen. The shittiest of all flexes. All of that was enough to make Mackenzie a danger to the public and just generally an unlikable person, but it didn't explain why she had driven 92 miles an hour into a brick building with her boyfriend and his friend in the car. If she did this on purpose, they needed to try and find a motive, and they found that in interviews with Dominic's family and by taking a look into his phone. Through that, investigators learned that Mackenzie and Dominic had a toxic relationship full of breakups and threats, specifically from Mackenzie, who was undeniably abusive. Teen dating violence is way more common than people realize. According to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1 in 3 teens in the U.S. will experience physical, sexual, or emotional abuse from a partner before reaching adulthood. According to court records, in July of 2022, the same month as the fatal crash, Mackenzie made numerous threats towards Dominic. Videos found on Dominic's phone showed one specific altercation in which Mackenzie could be heard verbally degrading Dominic, spewing threats, and damaging his property. Dominic wasn't comfortable allowing Mackenzie into his home anymore and attempted to reason with her, calm her down and just de-escalate the situation. But Mackenzie was not having it and banged on his door, demanding to be let inside, all the while continuing to threaten and degrade Dominic with quote-unquote highly inappropriate names. At one point during the altercation, Mackenzie threatened to key Dominic's car if he didn't open the door. She also verbally counted down multiple times in an attempt to force Dominic to let her in like she was his mother. She repeatedly told him that this was his last chance to open the door, saying, "You're gonna come open this door right now or there's gonna be a serious fucking problem." When he didn't open the door, Mackenzie threatened to break the handle and then was heard hitting it. She said, "Dom, I'm gonna give you one last second or else I'm keying your car." Dominic wound up having to stop recording so he could call his mom for help. I know that most of the time we hear about men victimizing women, so I do want to make sure you guys visualize what Dominic is going through from both sides. If this was a man beating on the door to be let in and making threats if a woman didn't open the door, it would be absolutely terrifying, and it was. Regardless of the norm gender reversal, that behavior is and was terrifying, and that was just one example. Police learned about another incident prior to the crash on July 17th, where Mackenzie was driving on Interstate 71 with Dominic in the passenger seat, and she threatened to immediately crash that vehicle. According to court records, the two had gotten into some kind of argument that Mackenzie felt warranted an interstate car crash. Once again, Dominic called his mom for help and asked to be picked up. Dominic's friend Hench headed over there to pick him up and stayed on the phone with him throughout the incident. While on the phone, Hench heard Mackenzie say, "I will crash this car right now." Mackenzie wound up exiting the highway and pulled over on Route 82 between Pearl Road and Bagley Road. And as Hench got closer to the vehicle, Mackenzie opened the passenger door and physically struck Dominic with both hands before he left. It was all making the worst kind of sense now, and with all of that information, the medical examiner changed the manner of death for both Dominic and Davion. Their deaths were no longer ruled an accident, they were homicides. On November 4th, Mackenzie, who is now 18 years old, was arrested on 2 counts of aggravated murder, 4 counts of murder, 4 counts of felonious assault, 2 counts of aggravated vehicular homicide, 1 count of trafficking psilocybin, 1 count of drug possession for the mushrooms, and 1 count of possessing criminal tools for the digital scale. Cleveland 9 reported that Mackenzie also faced 3 additional charges for allegedly breaking into the Columbia Church of God in Columbia Station on July 19th, which was just a few weeks before the crash, and she was charged with 1 count each of breaking and entering, vandalism, and desecration. That happened just 2 days after she had threatened to crash the car on the interstate.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day, and that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
Even though Mackenzie was 18, she was taken to the juvenile detention center and held on a $500,000 bond. Initially, it wasn't clear whether or not Mackenzie would be tried as an adult or a juvenile, but eventually the district attorney's office decided they intended to charge her as an adult. One of the reasons being that Mackenzie's driving shifted dramatically within just a few seconds. She went from driving responsibly, even using her turn signal, to going full throttle into that building. It seemed clear to them that she had made a conscious decision to change her behavior in that moment, and she was going to have to answer for that. She was formally indicted on March 24th of this year, 2023, but instead of taking her chances with a jury, Mackenzie opted for a bench trial. A bench trial is your right. You have a right to face a jury of your peers, but you can also choose to forego that jury if you'd rather a judge decide your fate. It's a risky move, but the state holds the burden of proof in criminal proceedings, and all a defendant needs is one juror to believe that they're innocent. You tend to see people pick bench trials when they don't believe anyone's going to be able to look at all of the evidence and vote not guilty, and they're hoping a judge will look at the case without emotion and only legal culpability. Mackenzie's trial began on August 7th with Judge Russo, no relation to Dominic, on the bench, holding the rest of Mackenzie's life in her hands. The prosecution claimed that Mackenzie drove her car into that brick building intentionally, that she meant to kill Dominic and she didn't care if she took Davion too. They argued that Mackenzie's recent anger and threats towards Dominic may have pushed her to carry out the crash as a way to kill him. The prosecution said Mackenzie's past threats and aggression towards Dominic provide an important perspective of how Mackenzie responds in situations where she is displeased or in a disagreement with others. Further, the evidence shows that Mackenzie was aware of her ability to cause harm to the victims, especially by means of her own vehicle, and how she could use the power of threats and control to ultimately reach the outcome she desired. The other evidence confirms that there was no mistake or accident in deliberately crashing her car and ending the lives of the victims. July 31st was not an isolated incident. It was a fatal escalation of prior dangerous and calculated behavior involving her boyfriend. The prosecution played the video of Mackenzie threatening Dominic, as well as surveillance footage of that crash. They further brought up that she told medical staff it was her fault that her boyfriend was dead. Mackenzie's defense told the jury that the crash was not intentional and emphasized that nobody knew what happened in that car leading up to and during that crash. Kind of a shitty argument considering it was her actions that led to the death of the only people who could say otherwise, and it's a little bit convenient for her. The defense said that there were many possibilities of how the crash could have happened. He questioned, is the speeding just kids being kids? Is it Dominic grabbing the steering wheel? Is it Mackenzie maybe speeding and saying, oh my God, it's dark out, it's a light, I'm coming up to this, I better do something. And she goes like that to avoid an accident, not acting purposefully, but in fact trying to avoid it? Is it sudden acceleration panic? Those are all possibilities. What? That's like asking if dragons came down or if a tornado propelled them towards the building. All of those seem just as likely as the crap that they just spewed out, and we don't blame the victims here. Even if Dominic had grabbed the wheel, it would not have saved him since she was driving 92 miles an hour towards a brick building. They could not have missed it even if he was the one that grabbed the wheel. The defense even suggested that maybe the airbags going off 4 to 5 seconds before hitting the wall could have been the cause of the crash, which is absolutely insane. The robot they were driving knew that nothing good could come from what was going on and went into protective mode, and they were trying to blame the safety features. And they kept on going. Mackenzie's mother testified that she thought Mackenzie's 2017 diagnosis of postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, also known as POTS, could have been a factor. POTS is a condition where someone can feel dizzy or lightheaded when they stand up, and Mackenzie did absolutely no standing between when she was rolling the speed limit on Pearl Road, and it certainly didn't make her drive out of her way to a business park at the crack-ass of dawn on a Sunday. It should also be noted that according to court testimony, she denied any medical conditions when applying for her license. She even renewed her license after the crash and again denied any medical condition. Her defense was like a drunk game of blindfolded darts where they had thrown a bunch of shitty excuses into a hat and decided to argue whichever one they hit. I don't know why they went this route on a bench trial of all trials because I can't imagine any judge entertaining any of this squirrely bullshit. You can imagine that many believed if Mackenzie was willing to crash her car to kill Dominic and Davion, she must have been willing to kill herself as well, but several witnesses testified that everything seemed normal in the days leading up to the crash. The host of the party that the three had attended on July 30th testified that he didn't witness any fights or arguments between Dominic and Mackenzie, and everything seemed fine between the two. Mackenzie's great aunt testified that Mackenzie and Dominic were deeply in love and had been getting along well in the days before the accident. And there were exactly 14 days between the time she threatened to crash the car on the interstate and the day she crashed the car into the Plitco building, so I suppose that days is the correct word to use here. As for Mackenzie's comments at the hospital, the defense argued that they didn't constitute a confession to murder, but rather an expression of guilt due to her role as the driver. And frankly, that's about the only argument she could make here. She didn't specify much in her comments, and she's claiming innocence now, so the back and forth over what she meant wasn't going to hold a ton of weight in court, especially when there was no jury involved. It's every other ounce of evidence that has her up a shit creek without a popsicle stick. Mackenzie did not take the stand in her own defense. The trial concluded on August 10th, and Judge Russo said that she'd have a verdict the following week. After closing arguments and before a verdict was rendered, Davion's mom told WKYC, "We are just thankful that we feel justice was served today. There's not a day that goes by that we don't miss our son, and justice was served for him today. But honestly, there's no winners here. There's no winners here today." Davion's father posted to Facebook that he hoped the verdict would be fair and bring peace to the families. He said, "We do not seek vengeance, only justice for our son, who was nothing more than an innocent passenger looking for a ride home." On August 14th, the judge made her decision, and Mackenzie was found guilty on all 12 charges. She cried as the verdict was read and was now facing an automatic life sentence with eligibility for parole after serving between 15 to 32 years, depending on whether or not the judge chose consecutive or concurrent sentences. If the sentences were consecutive, she would serve one sentence, and then when that one was up, would serve the next, and then so on and so forth. If her sentences were concurrent, she'd be serving all of her sentences at the same time, meaning that the longest sentence would be the greatest amount of time she would serve. Following the verdict, Dominic's father told NBC that he didn't want Mackenzie to spend her life in prison. He said, "It's horrible for everybody. Yeah, I lost my son. It's harder on our family, but I don't want the rest of her life ruined too. It isn't going to make me feel any better." He added, "She's just a little kid. She fucked up. She did a damn stupid thing, but now her parents are destroyed. Her family's destroyed too. I wish there was a way she could get some kind of help, some kind of treatment." August 21st was sentencing day. When arguing for the maximum sentence, the prosecution played TikTok videos of Mackenzie filmed after the crash. In one video, she's with a friend at a concert, and in the other, she's dressed up, dancing, and celebrating Halloween. The prosecution said that these videos were evidence that Mackenzie didn't have remorse for her actions. Dominic and Davion's families delivered victim impact statements, and Law and Crime was there to cover them. Dominic's mother stated, "No one wanted this to be murder or to punish Mackenzie Shirilla for this accident, but this was not a car accident. The evidence and science proved that Mackenzie Shirilla murdered my son Dominic as well as Davion. I lost 3 children in that crash. Not a minute goes by each day that I don't think about my son as well as Davion. My heart is forever broken." She also addressed Mackenzie directly, saying that Mackenzie had a choice, unlike Dominic and Davion, saying, "Mackenzie, you're going to prison because you did this. Be thankful you're still alive and have a future, whatever that may be." Dom and Davion were robbed of their futures, their hopes, and their dreams. Mackenzie showed no mercy on Dominic, nor did she on Davion. Only God at this time can have mercy on her soul. Law and Crime reported on Davion's mom as well, as she said the following about her son. "He was an amazing soul with a heart of gold. He gave to the world what he wanted most in his own life, love. The kind of love that would rescue a friend in the middle of the night, no questions asked. The kind that would protect others and honor them." Mackenzie's mom also spoke, addressing the TikTok videos the prosecution had played, claiming they were the only times Mackenzie did something for herself. She said, apart from that, Mackenzie stayed in her room crying next to a shrine she had created for Dominic. Mackenzie's mom asked for leniency, stating, "This is a tragic accident she doesn't remember. Davion, he's a new friend, and rest assured." NBC reports that the judge cut her off and asked, "What does that mean? His life is worthless?" Mackenzie's mom withdrew her comment and apologized to the victims of the families, as she fucking should. Mackenzie did not testify in her own defense during the trial, but she did read a statement at her sentencing hearing. She cried and hyperventilated as she read, "To the families of Dominic and Davion, I'm so deeply sorry. I hope one day you can see I would never let this happen or do it on purpose. I wish I could remember what happened. We were all friends and Dom was my soulmate. I wish I could take all your pain away. And to my family, thank you for the support and all the love you guys give. I love you all so much." I have a lot that I would like to address in that, but I don't need to because Judge Russo did. In various videos online, you can watch the judge as she says, all three of the families and the friends of these families are all suffering, and all of their lives have been irrevocably changed because of the actions of the defendant. The unintended and collateral consequences of a selfish, intentional, and cruel decision by Mackenzie will ripple forever in time. It's literally changed history because it's ended 2 lives. 2 young men are dead. Their deaths were horrible, terrifying, and tragic. I will say again, if any reasonable person reviews Exhibit 802, which was a video of her flying past a security camera, there can be no doubt in your mind what happened this night. There could be no doubt of the absolute terror of the 2 people in that car. The defendant controlled all the events. She chose the day, specifically, she chose the day just before her 18th birthday. She chose to drive a car, the time to drive the car. She chose an obscure, previously scouted route through an industrial parkway. She chose the target to hit and the victims. She chose the means and the method to follow through, and she planned and purposefully executed the events of July 31st, 2022. Adding, even if Mackenzie intended to also die in this crash, that is irrelevant. A failed suicide attempt is not a defense to murder. The judge addressed Mackenzie directly and stated, "There's only one person who's responsible for the pain of everyone in this room, and that person is you, Mackenzie." The judge stated that the difficulty in sentencing for her came down to whether or not she believed Mackenzie should get consecutive or concurrent sentences. For the murder of Davion, Mackenzie was sentenced to 15 years to life. She was given another sentence of 15 years to life for Dominic's murder as well. She was ordered to serve them concurrently, so the 2 sentences merged into one, and a parole board will eventually be responsible for whether or not she's released in 15 years or spends the rest of her life in jail. Her driver's license was also permanently revoked. On August 31st, Mackenzie was admitted to the Ohio Reformatory for Women. Her first parole hearing won't happen until September of 2037, when she'll be 33 years old. She has already filed an appeal for her convictions and sentences. Davion's family established a scholarship fund in his memory, and on the fund's page, they expressed their desire to bring something positive from this tragedy. They want Davion to be remembered and honored by contributing to happiness and goodness. The fund aims to create a memorial scholarship to support aspiring barbers in pursuing their dreams, a dream that Davion shared. I'm going to link the scholarship fund in the show notes of this episode. If you or someone you know, including a teenager, is in an abusive relationship and needs help, you can reach out to Love is Respect at 866-331-9474 or visit their website at www.loveisrespect.org. And of course, I will link that in the show notes of this episode as well. For photos pertaining to this case, check out Dominic and Davion's highlight at the top of my Instagram profile at The Heather Ashley, and join me there today at noon Eastern, where you go live with me and we talk about today's case and all other true crime cases on your mind. To get access to ad-free and bonus episodes, subscribe to our Apple Premium or head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/bigmadtruecrime, where for just $2 whole a month, your episodes are totally ad-free. If you love the podcast, feel free to leave a review. It makes my day every single time. And if you have a case you'd like to hear covered, share it with Big Mad True Crime on social media, because all cases are covered by listener request. I'll be bringing you a brand new case next week, and I cannot wait. But until then, we out. Okay, everybody, we are officially at the end of this episode, which means it is time for me to share a review that made my whole day because you guys are the best, and I want to thank you publicly. This is from KBear1129 and says, I love listening to Heather get straight to the point with each true crime story. I love her energy and how big mad she gets because I feel the exact same way when I'm listening. The snarky remarks are also the best and make me laugh. Seriously, one of my top favorite podcasts. Seriously, KBear, you are one of my top favorite people of today. I love you so much. Okay, love you guys. Bye, bye, bye. If you guys have made it this far, you get to hear my hot take. We've never done these before, but there have been a few cases recently where I've wanted to share my thoughts, but not mingled in with the facts, so here goes nothing. In the end here, do I think that Mackenzie is some crazy, shitty monster with a passion for murder? I don't. It seems like she has very little skill when it comes to regulating her emotions, and I would love to know more about her home life. There's obviously zero excuse for what she did, but I've seen this kind of dysregulation in a lot of teens where they fly off the entire handle at very small problems. I'd be curious to know what kind of adult influence she had in her life. We heard that she had dated Dominic for quite some time and had lived with him for most of it, which is definitely not the norm when it comes to teens her age. Threatening to key his car, banging on the door, threatening to crash the car prior to the crash that killed him. It was one escalation after another to get her way. If I'd done some shit like that when I was younger, my dad would have worn me as a whole-ass Halloween costume. I feel like some of the teens these days don't seem to understand the gravity of the decisions that they make, be it failing in school because they refuse to do their work or crashing a car to make some kind of point. I don't think she knew what point she was trying to make, and I highly doubt it was this, but there are consequences to the actions that she made, and they're pretty fucking horrible actions. Depending where you watch clips from this trial, you may have a different opinion of Mackenzie's demeanor. I went in watching some salacious clips with hints on how you should feel, so then I stopped watching those and sought out clips with no additives. In the salacious clips, you'll probably come out feeling like Mackenzie was playing a manipulative game with her body language and demeanor, but when you watch the longer segments of the trial without any direction, it hits a little bit differently. Mackenzie obviously knew what she was doing, there's no doubt about that, but I don't think her sole purpose was to murder her boyfriend and his friend. I honestly don't think she thought that far ahead at all. I think she raged, stepped on the gas, and whatever happened, happened. Because of that, she's now going to have to live with the consequences of those decisions, and it does seem like it's eating her up. When she hadn't been arrested yet, it seemed like maybe she was able to compartmentalize those feelings and really convince herself that it was an accident. I mean, she does claim that she doesn't remember anything, which is whatever. But now that there's really no question as to what happened as far as going out of the way and getting up to the speeds that she did in that short period of time, I do think that she's struggling, and those are the consequences of her actions. Dominic and Davion's families will be struggling for the rest of their entire lives and will never be able to get back what they lost, who they lost. Mackenzie will more than likely get out of jail one day and she can build a life again. She can get a job, pursue a career, make friends, and even fall in love if she wanted to. All of those things are things that Davion and Dominic will never be able to do. Their families will be left to dream about what that would have looked like for them, but they will never be able to see it in action. Mackenzie's mom will be able to call and visit her daughter in jail, but Dominic and Davion's parents will never have that luxury. While Mackenzie's family is able to make new memories with her regardless of how unideal the circumstances are, Dominic and Davion's families will only ever have what they had. Pictures, videos, voice messages, and the past. The judge made a really good point here when she said that even if Mackenzie's intent was to kill herself, it does not matter and it is not a defense. There is no defense here. You can pick apart her inability to regulate her emotions, whatever her upbringing might have been, and what her true intent was that night, but none of that actually matters. She ended Davion and Dominic's lives, and they couldn't do anything to stop it. They didn't have a choice, they didn't stand a chance, and the only person who survived is the one who made the decision to end their lives. And because of that, there has to be some kind of justice. I think that the judge did the only thing that she could have done here, and it looks like Mackenzie is getting the justice as far as it can go here. End of hot take.